Hello, malt mates. Welcome. Excuse me, cough coming up. Just have a little medicinal swig. Sip. I don't swig whiskey. Sip whiskey. And I'm just about to embark on review number 1114 extras, in which extra content, extra opinion, extra perspective, and a little bit of an extra deep dive into how I go about accessing a challenging single malt, flavour-wise, in order to make it accessible so I can break it down and understand it better. Delicious. Heavy hitting, sour, bitter dram, plum wine. There's almost a tequila note in the background as well, and a touch of absinthe. You know that wormwood that you get in absinthe, you know, the herbaceous, medicinal, very ultra bitter plant. You're getting that in this. This is Lindor's single malt from the east coast of Scotland in the Kingdom of Fife. And it's a small distillery. It's relatively new. It's not even 10 years, well, I think it's about, can't be far off it, about 10 years old, roughly. And I'll keep it rough because I'm not great with numbers. And it's slowly finding its feet. It was a distillery of mild curiosity in the early days of production. A lovely little distillery to visit. Good welcome, good home baking for their cafe there. But the whiskey's always been considered to be a little bit awkward. And that is not a criticism. That's actually a good constructive claim for any whiskey to have, because it tends to fit in the direction that whiskey's going. So if you were to take, for example, a bottle of Glenfiddich 12-year-old, which is a really good classic example of a light whiskey, lightly delivering some light malted barley moments. In other words, the Scottish equivalent of Jameson's. Very accessible, easy with ice, easy to sip and knock back, and easy to move on and quickly forget about. Now, I'm not being disparaging about Glenfiddich. I'm just calling it as it is. It's designed to be a light, brand-led whiskey, and in that respect, it works very, very well. And there's a lot of whiskey fans start out somewhere along the line with Glenfiddich being their most accessible whiskey. However, one of the beauties of Scotch whisky is that it's not just the difference in flavours, it's the difference in styles, intensity, signature, personality, and the delivery of that flavour. When it comes to Scotch whisky, there's an awful lot going on within the genre. It's not just sherry monsters, peat monsters, and malt monsters. There are so many other signatures and combinations of signatures going on that it's what keeps our interest. And whilst some whiskies are easy to access, you can pour a glass, particularly if you've had it before, and you're ready to go, and you get a blast of the familiar, and you're happy. You've paid your money, you got your bottle, and you're moving on. And many people find that with Laphroaig, despite its very heavy phenolic signature. It's consistent. It's very easy to recognise Laphroaig. And it's very, well, up until recent years, the quality's been very dependable, although the new bottlings vary significantly, and the Laphroaig Select, frankly, I wouldn't touch with a barge pole, and I highly recommend you do not buy it unless you want to buy a bottle of disappointment. I don't know why they're bottling it. I seriously don't know why they do it. This is why we're lucky we've got other options. It's not just buying Laphroaig under the name Williamson from independent bottlers, but it's kind of getting round in our own time and when we're ready to new distilleries which have appeared in the Scotch whisky scene in recent years, including Lindor's. which is a brave concept because they're not trying to be like some other new distilleries and create light and fruity. In other words, anonymity, unfortunately. And yeah, there's some distilleries making that mistake, but Lindores isn't. It's got a strong and powerful signature. And you might be wondering, what's the best way to access a whisky that you've just bought? And it's possibly a name that you're familiar with, but you've bought an independent bottling. But the fact is it cask strength. And that makes a huge difference in terms of intensity of flavour, because it hasn't been diluted. As soon as you add water to any whisky, you're subjecting it to dilution and the diminishment of flavour. End of, period, no exceptions. And I'm sure you understand that. With Lindores here, and this is a great example for this extras, what I do is I pour a glass. Here's the one I poured for the review, so it's about half an hour in the glass. I've added a drop of water, fresh, clean tap water that's been rested to let the chlorine evaporate. I've nosed it neat, I've tasted it neat, it's quite astringent. The first thing you do, don't take a big sip, take a very small sip. The smaller, the better. Even if once you pour your glass, if your sip is only literally a few drops of the whisky, just enough to wet your tongue, that is actually being a lot kinder to your palate, because there's less chance of you overwhelming your tongue and your sensation receptors with something which is unfamiliar and too strong. When you've taken that drop of whisky, leave it where it is in your tongue. Don't swallow. Don't rush it. Let it find its way around your palate to where the sour sensors are, the sweet sensors are, the bitter senses are, and just forget about the flavour and focus on the first impressions, which tend to be the intensity, the strength, and the sensation range. At 60.2%, this is high strength single malt, packing a lot of flavour. So do not be afraid to dilute it. And when I say diluting, give it 10 minutes from when you've poured it neat. Add your 5 millilitres of water, or just a few drops, whatever suits your palate, and then when you're ready, add more. And as you do, watch for the swirling. That gives you an idea of the substance of character, of the richness of the barley oils. In other words, if they're claiming non-chill filtering, do they really, really mean it? In this case, you see thick viscimmetry. That's the swirling effect. And you'll also notice the way it coats the edge of the glasses, leaves the coat line, the legs, the beads. All that is signalling to you in tandem with the fact that what you have is natural colour, because it's stated as natural colour, which means there's no misleading caramel colorant chemicals in it. And this means you can get a more honest and accurate appraisal. You'll notice we're not rushing this. We are taking our time. One of the biggest disappointments many whisky fans have with their first taste of a whisky is not the whisky, it's the fact they're going too fast. They're rushing it. The pace is too dramatic. It's too fast. And what really helps is to have the whisky in tandem with another whisky you're familiar with, not peated. Unpeated is preferable, just to kind of help get your palate into the zone in order to appreciate the difference between the two whiskies. And the more time you spend, the slower you go, the more differences you will register. Why? Because they're there. They're just there. So we've added now 10 millilitres of water, getting a little bit of Scotch mist appearing in the glass, refreshingly light, healthy, natural colour. The nose, more of a bouquet in the nose. The barley sugar is coming out to meet us, and it's intense, and it has a dynamic. It's not generalised, it's dynamic, and it's intense, and it's flavoursome on the nose. And this is, of course, verified by the statement on the front of the label that they're using barley from local farms in the Kingdom of Fife, which is famous for the quality of the barley that it provides to the Scotch whisky industry. Why? Because it's a very fertile region of Scotland that tends to have the right climate, being on the east coast, and importantly, slower growing barley in a colder climate, which generates more flavour and substance of character that goes along with the flavour. This is the importance of barley. Let's go back to the whisky now. As you can see, there's no rush. I'm not rushing it. This glass is exactly the same malt poured yesterday. But because I never finished the glass, and because I covered it with this very convenient plastic egg cup, which is absolutely perfect because it doesn't get knocked off, I can now nose between the new glasses from yesterday's pour to today's pour, and I'm getting different readings due to the added significant oxidization of yesterday's pour, which still has plenty of flavour in the glass. The new pour is still intense, plummy, sour, bitter stones, seed stones. That's a difficult flavour to register when we're not in the habit of eating orchard fruit stones. But say, for example, almonds are an orchard fruit stone. And so plum stones are edible, but just have a small amount. And in particular, next time you eat an apple, eat the core. Eat the core, because the apple seeds are highly nutritious and they taste of bitter almond. Yeah. Which, of course, by the way, is the taste of cyanide. But there's tiny, tiny, tiny quantities of cyanide. It won't do you any harm unless you're eating whole bags of apples in a one. But we tend to eat one apple at a time. And it's only when we take the time to eat and taste the seeds from fruit that we start to increase the range of our palate's references. It's the same with an orange, for example. We all cut an orange into slices and we eat the fruit out and we leave the rind and we leave the peel. But in fact, if you're in Italy, it's quite common for people eating an orange to eat the whole fruit, peel, rind, the lot. It's perfectly nutritious, it won't do you any harm, and you won't know what it tastes like till you try it. So try it. When you're tasting it, small quantities, hold it, spend time with it, allow your palate to subconsciously get used to it. Because we're referencing what we're tasting in two ways, consciously and subconsciously. We're very much aware of the conscious. It tends to be our first impressions, but really the best impressions are made by our subconscious, our collective survival flavour, survival instinct, which it just needs time and for us to really ignore the flavour initially and keep it generalised. This, you will find from experience, is where you kind of really develop a better palate. Many people have a palate that reaches a sticking point. they think if it comes to strong flavours, I'll stick with Laphroaig or Lagavulin and I won't explore any of these challenging independent bottlings. Or if these challenging independent bottlings are discovered at a whisky show, for example, it's very easy to go, oh, it's a bit much. Tip the glass away, rinse it with some water and move straight on to your next dram. At this point, you're missing an opportunity here, because the more we develop our palate, the more developed our palate becomes, and therefore the more styles and varieties, shapes, flavours and signatures of whisky we're more inclined to actually start enjoying. And this helps palate fatigue, because there comes a point, particularly if you're just a Glenfiddich drinker or, heaven help us, a Macallan drinker, you're very quickly going to get bored, with good reason. And it's very easy to say, well, okay, this is what I drink, this is what I've always drunk, this is what I'm always going to drink, end of my malt mission. If that's your attitude, good luck to you. But you're missing opportunities, you're missing malt moments, and you're missing great conversations within the whisky scene. So I recommend, whatever you're doing, you're probably right, just take it slower, just take it more graduated, taste less to begin with, and then just slowly ease yourself into a full glass. Whether that takes a few days, a few weeks, or even a few months, don't worry about that, malt mates, because the whisky's going nowhere. It's doing just fine in the bottle, particularly like this Lindor's Friar John Corr Chapter 3. If it's been bottled at 60.2%, I mean, this is going to last for generations. Unless you keep it in a windowsill in the south side of a greenhouse. I hope you found this interesting and useful. My conclusion is that first taste for me was off-putting, but I knew it was just a question of patience, perseverance and time. And I'm really enjoying this bottle at the moment, but I'll enjoy it even more because when I come back to it as an older, more mature, particularly an age-stated whisky, I'll have a good idea, because my palate's already familiar with it, as to what to expect and what I'm going to enjoy. And I'm sure there's going to be some lovely bottlings out there. See you later.